Did you happen to see the latest Apple conference? Do you notice how they gesture? Their hands are always in front of them, and they can't wait to talk to you about this, and they gesture like this, and they can't move their fingers like they're Barbie dolls or it's a low-poly model from a Grand Theft Auto game. Anyway, kind of leads up into our subject. Today at work, I sold -1 cars. What things have happened at your jobs that you just did not think were possible? Story 1. I work at a frozen yogurt shop, so people are usually happy when they come into the store, which means, unlike my old job at McDonald's, that it's mostly a bearable place to work. One afternoon, shop is moderately busy. A man comes in, jokes around with my coworker, asks if he can leave a bag behind the counter for like 10 minutes. She said yes. He leaves the bag, backpack, and goes. 5 minutes later, my coworker is counting the drawer and I'm out front. Having missed the whole first exchange, a woman at least 10 to 15 years older than him comes in and says, "My husband left a bag behind the counter. I just need to put something in it and I'll bring it right back." This is a little odd, but you can't see the bag from the front of the shop, so she had to have known it was there, and I saw her come in from across the parking lot. So she couldn't have been watching the man's and my coworker's exchange, so I say sure. She takes the bag and goes over to a table, and I help a customer. So I just hear her say thanks and put the bag back. Then she goes to the bathroom and then gets some yogurt. Then, 10 or so minutes later, she's still back by the yogurt machines. The man comes back in, and he's freaking furious. The first thing he says when he comes in the door across the store is, "You shrew." It's low in tone, but venomous, and the woman clearly hears it. She says something else back and moves towards the front of the store. They argue for a moment, really viciously, but with a low volume, and I hear him say "frick" a few times, and then he grabs her arm, drags her back to the counter, and grabs the bag. Now, this guy is much younger than the lady and bigger in built, so I wasn't sure if he was her husband or some sketchy dude. Remember, I was in the back when he came in the first time. I say, "Excuse me," but they're arguing again, and this time she hits him across the face, and the volume of their argument is rising. I'm still not sure if this dude is stealing the bag or what, and so as they start to leave, I say more loudly, "Excuse me." The man turns around, snarls, "Curse you, shrew," quite loudly, in front of my 15 other customers, 3 of whom were under the age of 5 or 6, and leaves. An old man in line to be rung up goes, "Hey," and some college kids who just paid stand up from their chairs. A moment later, the wife of the old man says, "Hold on to these. We're just going to check on that," and hands me their yogurt, and she, the old man, and the college kids go out and beat up the guy in the parking lot. Like, first they're all lecturing him, and then he goes to punch the old man, and the college kids get him in a headlock and are talking really lowly to him. And the old man says something, and the man goes really pale, and they let him go. Then they say something to the woman, who goes equally pale, and comes back inside and pays for their yogurt like they didn't just lay down the smack in the parking lot. What the hell? I've gone into a lot of businesses where they don't even allow backpacks, like a deli or something. They just don't allow them at all. First, I think it's just because they don't want people trying to steal something, but I think it's just to avoid situations like this. I've been in coffee shops where people have asked, "Hey, can you watch my backpack for a moment?" That's kind of a different story. But this just sounds like it could have been some sort of shady deal gone wrong, and they're just using the back of the yogurt shop as some kind of like cover-up. Very weird. And it's weird how it escalated, and we still don't really know exactly what was in the backpack. It's like the briefcase in Pulp Fiction. You never know what's in there. Story 2. A few cool car dealer stories from past employment. 1. Awful dealer I work for. The lot porter was doing inventory on the lot and moving new cars around. They used those lock boxes that you roll the window up on so the keys are with the car. They couldn't get the lockbox open. They run the VIN on inventory and find that they never took delivery of the car, yet there it was. An hour later, find out the car was reported stolen from a dealer 200 miles away. Someone stole the car, drove to my town, parked it on the lot, and left it where it sat for over a month. 2. Great dealership I worked at. A couple comes in, takes a car for a test drive. Some people are gone for 10 to 15 minutes. 30 minutes tops. Salesmen call the cell phone number. No answer. 1 hour. 2 hours. 5 hours. Nothing. At the end of the day, the sales department calls police to report the car stolen, only to be told it isn't stolen because we gave them the car to test drive and didn't put a time or distance limit on the car. The car is returned the next morning with 500-ish miles on it and an empty tank. Never saw the couple again. 3. Service department manager comes in one morning and sees a customer car in the parking lot on a jack with a wheel missing. Frick, someone stole a wheel. Odd, just one rim was stolen. Toward the end of the day, someone sees a guy putting the wheel back on that car. Turns out some random guy had a blowout on his car, walked down the road during the night, and took a random wheel off a car, put it on his car. Then later on in the day, got a new tire for his car, and came back to return the borrowed wheel he took. That story came out better than expected. I'm glad that this guy actually returned this tire. He was being honest about it. It's kind of an ingenious thing to do. As far as this one thing of someone taking advantage of a test drive, I had a similar thing when I worked security at a hotel. They asked for a card as a ID for a deposit if you wanted to check out a room. Somebody went to check out a room to see if it was okay. They left their ID there, and they were gone for 30 minutes up there. We don't know what's going on. We as security get sent up there. The dude is taking a shower, and he actually claims, well, I didn't know you couldn't do that, so we actually had to trespass him off of the property for that, for taking advantage. So, story 3. I work at a Sherry's restaurant, which is basically like a regional IHOP in the PNW. Don't know PNW, never heard of Sherry's, no IHOP. In our front display case with fresh pies, we also had a tray of caramel pecan cinnamon rolls that were at least 4 years old because they were sprayed with food preservatives and other stuff. Calcified, hardened, impossible to do anything with. Apparently, we had a host, was eventually fired for good reason, that sold one of those rolls to a customer. A lady asked him for a roll and pointed at the one in the display case. Instead of telling her that those rolls were for display purposes only, he apparently took the tray into the back of the kitchen, how no one noticed is beyond me, and hacked at it with a steak knife and who knows what else. He boxes the roll up and sells it to the lady. Meanwhile, no one has noticed that the tray of rolls in the front display case is gone. Several hours later, this lady calls back and demands to speak with a manager. Apparently, she had no idea what she was supposed to do with this fossil. Was she supposed to call the health department, the police, or what? I don't think she tried to eat it. Reportedly, she microwaved it, and it started smoking. Needless to say, we gave her a full refund as well as a free pack of cinnamon rolls. You'd think the guy cutting into it would have realized that it takes that much effort to cut into the rolls. There's probably something amiss. Too long didn't read? An ex-coworker sold fossilized cinnamon rolls to a customer. There should have been some notice. How long does it take to cut into this thing for him to realize maybe you couldn't eat this thing? Maybe the person thinks this customer has jaws like the guy from Moonraker or the James Bond movies. I don't get it. I know that I've been to a lot of places that have had fake food in the window, usually places that serve like ramen or sushi. It's just something to show what the food's going to look like. I don't know if anyone's ever tried to buy that kind of food. I hope not. Story 4. I used to work at a Sears back in college, and we were on commission in lawn and garden. One month, we had a massive storm with trees down all over town. Some people were looking at weeks to get out of their driveways, etc., if they waited on the city to clear. So they would go out to a main road and get a ride down to our place, figuring they'd buy some chains to yank the tree out of the way, or a chainsaw to cut it up, or something equally, imminently reasonable, in theory. Once they got home, they realized their Honda Civic wasn't going to pull that 40-foot tree anywhere, or that they didn't actually know how to use a chainsaw, blade oil, fuel mixture, etc. The city was actually incredibly good at getting stuff cleared, so most of this stuff got returned on me. I think we had a 1-month window where it could take our commission back. So I come into work and clock in that weekend, and I'm something like negative $1,500 on my numbers. Nobody had ever seen someone start that much in the hole on a single day. Worst day of my retail career. I had someone come in and return a tractor, 3-bin bagger, and the warranty on a tractor I sold. I asked my manager, and he just shrugged his shoulders. I opened up the day like $4K in the hole. That was the first time Sears had to bump my paycheck up to minimum wage. Story 5. Well, on a more positive note, I'm in college to become a special education teacher, but I currently work part-time in a special education classroom as a paraprofessional. We had a 6-year-old girl with autism last year. Sweetest kid in the world, but she didn't speak. Her mom had given up, and eventually she split and left her daughter in foster care. Luckily, a foster family in the area took her, so we were able to continue working. She was working well with a speech device, and that was enough for her teacher, but not for me. I tried to get her to speak at every opportunity. June rolls around, and it's the last 2 weeks of school. She's come a long way and done so much, but still hasn't said a word in her life. We're outside playing in the grass, and I ask her, "Jane, what's your favorite color?" I expected the mechanical voice of the touchpad, but instead, she deliberately pointed to the sky and said, "Blue." I cried, the other paraprofessional cried, and we called her foster parents so they could cry too. We never dreamed that would happen, but it did. She's doing very well this year and has a vocabulary of about 20 words. I babysat for her over the summer, and her 5th word was friend, in reference to me. Good stuff. Would read again. I applaud your determination. Story 6. I was working in the sporting goods department of a very large retail chain that sells guns. A man and his significant other come to the counter and tell me they wish to purchase a rifle. After inspecting it, he declares that he would like to purchase. I file the normal paperwork and call the FBI hotline, only to find out that he is a convicted felon. I inform him that there was an issue and I can't sell this to him. I give him the hotline number and the request code, which is standard operating procedure for this store chain. He tells me that his wife will purchase it. I tell him that's not an option because she was with him during his attempt to buy a firearm per the law. He then asks for 2 machetes out of the case. He is very upset at this point, so I tell him I need my manager's approval for the sale. I call my manager over, and the guy goes ballistic on the manager because I wouldn't sell him the machete without approval. The manager sells them to him and writes me up for poor customer service. Cursing retail. In Poway, California, a manager at a Walmart was shot and unalived in the store parking lot in 1993 in this exact situation. Customer wanted to buy a gun, was denied. Manager walked the guy out to his car as a way of saying sorry about that and was unalived. Source: a plaque at the store honoring the manager. I think the manager should have been a little more involved in the entire situation. I also know that no matter what I say to this, there's going to be a lot of opinions about this story in the comments. I feel that just as a driver who was involved in a drunk driving accident or who was the deliberate cause of driving while under the influence or caused a massive wreck shouldn't be allowed to drive a car. I kind of think there should be limits like this on someone that was convicted, especially if they used firearms in a violent way. But again, there's going to be a lot of opinions and comments on this one. Story 7. Working the customer service booth at a grocery store. I answer the phone. Hello, Groovy Grocery. This is Sleeping Gecko speaking. How may I help you? I'm 81, and I trusted you. I'm sorry, ma'am. What happened? What went wrong? Over the course of an hour and multiple phone calls, an elderly woman cussed me out and called my credibility into question because she purchased oranges that did not meet her highest standards. Not only was she upset that the oranges were not tasty, I immediately offered her a total refund and exchange, etc. She accused me of pulling a bait-and-switch scam. In her words, "What is this? You put out the good oranges, then when someone tells all their friends to buy them, you put out the junk?" I'm sorry, ma'am, that you had a negative citrus experience, but I can assure you there was no intent to trick or deceive you. You know dang well what you're doing down there. Too long didn't read? I didn't think it was possible to be cussed out by an 81-year-old woman I had never met regarding oranges. Negative citrus experience is such an amazing phrase. Story 8. You've probably heard the phrase like yelling fire in a crowded theater to describe the onset of utter pandemonium, yeah? This is in fact not true. We had an electrical fire in one of the projection booths while I was working at a very busy 20-screen theater. All of us employees had to go around to the individual cinemas to announce that there was a fire in the building, and everyone had to stay calm and follow evacuation instructions. No one really moved. The films were still running, except the one with the fire in the projection booth, and people were extremely reluctant to leave, even though we told them there was a fire. Too long didn't read? If you yell fire in a crowded theater, people will probably just sit there like idiots because they want to see the end of their film. Story 9. I once worked in a coffee shop that ran out of coffee for about 20 minutes. I saw a man fired because a customer complained about him doing H substance in the bathroom. I've seen a woman in her 40s make out with a teenage boy. She was ticked when we told her to stop. A waitress once knocked a fire extinguisher off the wall, filling the entire restaurant seating area with choking dust. Customers continued to sit and chat with their friends until we told them that they have to leave because you can no longer breathe the air. The cleanup that night was heck. I've seen employees told to go home because they've soiled their pants to the point that it's obvious from 100 feet away. They had to be told. I've seen doctor's notes for work absences reading, "Diagnosis, assault." I've seen people superglue serious hand lacerations back together so that they could continue working. I've worked a 12-hour shift with a 103-degree fever while walking to and from work in the rain at 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Food service industry worker. I could go on forever and ever. Whoa. Diagnosis Assault would be a freaking awesome name for a metal band. When I was driving in LA for rideshare, there was a specific coffee shop that I would frequent because they had decent Wi-Fi and they actually had outlets. A lot of the major chains will actually not have outlets in their coffee shops anymore because they don't want people just parking there. You would actually see homeless people park there, park a device there and just be there all day and maybe spend $1.25 on a tea. I have seen a lot of stuff. There was a lot of violent stuff going on, and I definitely tried to tip wherever I could. Working in the food service industry has you facing a lot more danger than you think you would face. Story 10. I used to manage a copy and print department, and one day I had this very innocent-looking 70-ish-year-old lady come in. She had me copy several covers to cleaning/repair manuals for various rifles, pistols, and assault weapons. Now, this wasn't too out of the ordinary, since my store was the closest copy place to our county fairgrounds, where in the Midwest, we have gun shows about every month. Less than a week later, she came back with a slightly odder print job. Covers for about a half-dozen homemade explosives manuals, tactical tags for maps, marking IEDs, enemy/friendly units, rally and objective points, etc., and detailed maps of our local Air Force base. Clearly, this sent up a few red flags, but for some reason, refusing to copy them for her just didn't seem safe. After she left, I notified my regional manager and the FBI. 2 agents were at my store in less than 15 minutes, and they ghosted and erased the hard drives on my copiers, and I spent the next 2 hours answering questions. I got a call from one of the agents a few days later with a few final questions and the standard, "Thank you for doing this service to your country." Never did hear anything related to this incident again, though. Story 11. I work as a background actor in TV and films. A minimum wage job where talking to an actor on set could get you fired, which has happened to many of my friends. One day I was sat next to Jimmy Smits in a bar scene and tried to keep to myself. Next thing I know, my brand new and completely silenced phone is ringing. I didn't know the alarm would go off even if everything was set to silent. I ran out of the room, only to return to one of the other actors in the scene saying I should be fired. Jimmy Smits then stands up and announces to the room, "I'm sorry my phone rang, everyone, but I had to take it. It was my agent." He gave me a little nod as he sat down and saved my job. Too long didn't read? Jimmy Smits saved my job and proved there are nice celebrities out there. I met some celebrities when I lived in LA. It's like any other type of people. There's good people, there's bad people, there's some in between. Also, I did talk to someone who worked as an extra in the movies and TV, and he laid it out for me, the whole process of trying to get in on it. It's kind of similar to the people that stand outside Home Depot that are looking for work. It's kind of weird how similar those two are. Story 12. A buddy of mine accidentally added a $5 million excavating truck to our warehouse inventory. The way our stocking system was set up, each part had a unique code of 2 letters followed by 4 numbers. Anyway, it was adjusting some returned parts back into our inventory and meant to adjust a certain part back in, but entered a letter wrong. The part he meant to put in the system was about $12, and the part that was 1 letter different was a $5 million truck. Company policy was that we could only adjust up to $500 in inventory and had to report all adjustments over $300. Anything higher had to be done by people in the front office. Needless to say, people kind of threw a fit when they saw a random extra $5 million in inventory with no explanation. We all had a laugh about it, though. One of the rare good times there. Were you like me, or were you expecting this person to get fired and yelled at over this? I've already been reading some stories where people are getting fired over less than this, over stuff that wasn't their fault. And I mean, this was an accident. I'm glad everyone had a laugh about it, and I guess $5 million is just so much of a discrepancy that people just had to stop and think about it instead of just blaming the person who had the accident. Glad it worked out this way.
Please like and subscribe if you made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the video and have a wonderful day.
Story 13. We had a manning shortage, and I ended up working in the forends of a submarine and firing torpedoes worth over $6.5 million. I know that in the movies it looks like the captain fires a torpedo by pressing a button in the control room, but in fact, it only sends a signal to the forward torpedo room where a guy, in this case me, operates a handle with a small button on the top, like the handbrake on an old car, that actually propels them out of the tube with a burst of compressed air. I fired 6 MK-48s that day, worth, I was told at the time, $1.1 million each. Of course, the expenditure was not actually so high because they were retrieved. We had a manning shortage. So said the Indianapolis Colts. Story 14. I lifeguard at a pool. I wasn't there personally when this happened, but I heard about it a few days after it happened. We used to have those machines that dry out your swimsuit. You put the suit in a hole, you press the lid down for a few seconds, and I guess it vibrates the living hell out of the swimsuit to dry it off. The one in the women's locker room didn't shut off right away when you open the lid. So most people have the sense to not stick the appendages in the machine when the lid opened. Well, except this old lady. She sticks her hand in and her suit wraps around her finger. Somehow, it cut her finger off. We don't have those machines anymore. When you're a lifeguard, don't you expect people drowning? You don't expect having to stem the flow of someone's bleeding stump of a finger. Story 15. I overcharged a guy $20,000 on a credit card. He had a bill for $2,222, and I charged him $22,222. I had no idea a credit card machine would accept that much, let alone that anybody has a spending limit over $20,000 on a credit card. I told him what happened after I found out over the weekend from the accounting department what I just did. So I called the guy and told him we were going to reimburse the $20K. His reply? Oh, that's embarrassing. I didn't even notice it was missing. Turns out he was a former Google VP. So he definitely wasn't living paycheck to paycheck. Wish we could all do stuff like that, right? I work very hard to try and have some sort of a buffer at the very least. It takes a while, and it just can really go away if there's an emergency happening, but nothing like this. I'd love to have a buffer of $20,000. That would be really nice to have. Not have to worry about things for a while. Story 16. I had a full-grown man threaten to beat me up over a $4 fast food meal in front of his young son, an equally messed up significant other. He then proceeded to scream at my manager that I should be fired for being rude. I'm female and barely over 5 feet tall. I was 18 at the time. I'm always freakishly nice to fast food employees. Then, last time I got Burger King, I forgot to say thank you after I had received my order, and she had asked if I wanted condiments. I was given a harsh, sarcastic, "You're welcome." Feels bad, man. I will never be nice to you people again. Story 17. I work as a server and have ended up losing money on more than a few shifts. I come in, order myself a burger, then don't earn enough in tips to pay for it. So I leave work that day with negative income. Pro tip? As a cook, I can make food appear for servers who are polite to me and try to steer customers away from ordering inane junk that's not on the dang menu. However, do not ever try to order junk for imaginary customers so you can sneak off and eat it yourself. I will find out, and I will not be happy. Story 18. I'm a bank teller, and one day when balancing out my drawer, I came up $30 short. Our policy says any outage over $25, long or short, results in a write-up. I was looking frantically, hoping to find it. I've only been in my job for 3 months. I didn't want to be wrote up. After 30 minutes of searching every possible reason for why I would be short $30, I looked up what my computer read for my tills. It said I had $980 in 50s. $980 in $50 bills. I bring this to the attention of my boss so we could correct it. She confirmed that was the reason I was short. Have any of you been trying ChatGPT or Bard or any of the other AI things lately? I've been trying a few things for a situation that I had where I had to measure out some pulls for a vocal booth. For some reason, Bard couldn't get the math right. I had to double check it myself, and then when I checked with Bard, it wasn't giving me the right answer at all. I just don't get it. How is it not trained in math? I mean, it made me long for the days of Wolfram Alpha. Story 19. I wrote a novel during work hours using a work PC, researching it using work internet access and printing draft copies for line editing on work printers. I'm now working on my second novel in the same cubicle and recently got a 5% pay rise. I work for the government, not US, and for some reason, the amount of work required by me is about 1/8 of the hours I'm contracted to be at work. I take breaks when I feel like it. No one cares when I turn up or when I go home. I have 5 managers. Story 20. Friend of mine is a manager in a supermarket. Apparently, elderly people shoplift more than young people. He told me stories of how he would witness an older woman hiding a ham under her dress and trying to walk out of the store. He stopped her and went to call the police. She ended up pooping herself. He was so surprised, he just let her go. But this is apparently the go-to strategy when old people get caught stealing. Ah, the old poop your pants to get away trick. Classic. Story 21. I was told, just yesterday actually, that at the next management meeting, I have to give an hour presentation on how to use Google and its related services. IT is cubicle heck. Dude, ultimate presentation. Do absolutely no work. Go into meeting and Google that biz. Really, just show, no matter the topic, a little Google can help. Open up Google Docs to take notes, remember pages with Google bookmarks, sign into Google Chrome, send an email, watch some presentation how-tos on YouTube. It would be totally awesome. Do you remember there was a site, I think it's still active, called Let Me Google That For You? If you wanted to ask some sort of question, you would ask it, and basically the site would then look that up on Google for you. It was just an extra step, but it was completely hilarious. I don't know about other people. Maybe older people have a little trouble with search engines, but to me, Google is pretty easy to use. I think this is a great way to show it. The college that was around here has a great motto, learn by doing. This would be awesome. Story 22. I used to work at McDonald's. When they were paying the managers their regular bonuses, they put it to F last name and got me, Frankie last name, instead of the actual manager, Freddie last name. I saw it, let them know, and they reversed the payment so I wouldn't pay tax on it. I never got the honesty reward they promised. But I did get a paycheck for negative $176, which I have framed at home as a memory of my 3 years there. Story 23. Work in a pharmacy. Had no idea you could be on 3 muscle relaxers, 2 tranquilizers, and 3+ pain medications and still retain the ability to walk. My God. And I know a lot of you will say they're selling them, and yeah, some for sure are. But some actually take it all themselves. Meanwhile, I have horrific back pain and can't even get a prescription strength ibuprofen. Story 24. I cooked a lobster tail in the microwave, and the bartender called me and my coworker out into the dining room so the customer could tell us it was the best he had ever eaten and Red Lobster has nothing on you. In our defense, there should have been 5 cooks and there were only 2 of us. And the oven and steamer were both broken, so everything got microwaved that day. Story 25. Customer service rep here. Someone actually called back to thank me and told me I did a good job. I about burst into tears. I once called AAA to give positive feedback for a tow truck driver that fixed my car. When she realized I wasn't complaining, she sounded so surprised and happy. As a customer, it felt so good to make her happy. Story 26. Work in a grocery store. People poop on the floor somewhat often. I worked in a library, and there was one person returning books with poop smeared in them constantly. I was 15 and had no power there, and I never understood why my boss never canceled her library card. Story 27. If I'm 5 minutes early for my job, I'm considered late. No one freaking understands how time works. In the military, early is on time is late, and late is unforgivable. Story 28. I had a customer insist that if we would only mix red ink and white ink for her, it would make orange. She said she had another print shop do it for her, and that's how to get the orange she wanted, with red and white. I thought, well, she either wants orange or she wants pink and is just confused how mixtures work. Turns out she wanted yellow. Thank you, PMS Books. Some of you might not know what PMS books are. It's not the PMS you're thinking of. It's a type of system called Pantone that has specific values for specific colors where people can choose the exact color they want and know how exactly to mix it. I dealt with those quite a lot when I worked for graphics people and ad agencies. Story 29. I'm in the Coast Guard, where one of our missions is to perform life-saving at sea. Last year, my cumulative lives saved was -1. No lives saved, and got to a scene too late and watched a man expire. Didn't think it was possible. I'm so sorry to hear that. That had to be horrible. Story 30. How many cars do you sell on a normal day? I never thought about it, but I doubt most car salespeople sell a car every day. I used to work at a dealership as a receptionist. You could sell 5 cars on a busy day and no cars at all for 2 weeks. It really depends. Story 31. I'm a student, but I tutor science part-time. That counts as work, all right? She tried to use a calculator to figure out, I know this is the wrong way to say this, but I gotta spell it out so I think the subtitles come out right. NA caret plus CL caret minus. I wanted to see what would happen. It took her 5 minutes. That's longer than anyone should be proud of. Remember when I talked about Wolfram Alpha before? I actually tried plugging that into Wolfram Alpha. Apparently, Na plus is sodium cation, Cl minus is chloride anion, but something about a caret being an exponent, like to the power of. I don't think it makes sense. Anybody that's more knowledgeable in chemistry and this stuff, make it make sense. Story 32. A friend of mine lost a $2,700 commission because the lady she had sold the car was arrested for her 6th DUI. The dealership happened to need more paperwork to complete the deal. She was never able to recover from that experience as a salesperson and left a month later. Story 33. I work at Popeyes, and this morbidly obese woman couldn't reach 1 foot in front of her to get to that 5-piece tender. Her fat wouldn't let her reach more than a couple inches. Picture a T-Rex. Please tell me you made her try a while before inching it closer. Slowly. Story 34. One of our students rang me just after the birth of her first daughter and asked me to phonetically spell out her Arabic name for her birth certificate so that people would pronounce it correctly when reading it in English. Too long didn't read? Got to name someone's kid. Story 35. That's payback for my junky Corolla. Don't blame you. I've seen dealerships flat out lie about a condition of a vehicle, be it used or new. My dealership isn't too bad about that, but it happens. Story 36. I work as a software developer at a very large online retailer. I tested a system I was working on for 15 minutes and caused a 30,000+ order backup. It wasn't supposed to be possible. I found a way. Story 37. I work at a computer repair shop, and a kid came in looking for a heatsink. I showed him where it was, and he said thanks, and walked out without paying. I even said, have a nice day. Godzilla. Story 38. About 4 years ago, a guy at work accidentally ordered 1 billion barrels of oil through our maintenance MRO system. Sadly, if we would have actually ordered that, we'd be billionaires right now. Story 39. I started a garage sale with 9 couches and ended the day with 11 and an extra bed. Worst garage sale ever. Story 40. One of the kids sharpened his finger. I always wanted to try that, but my fingers were too flat. Story 41. My boss was nice to me today. I once had a boss who cared more about the staff than the client. Story 42. Spent an entire 8-hour shift at Papa John's without making a single Pizza. No wonder they shut down. Story 43. I built a puke cannon today. It fires fake puke for a stage performance that requires projectile vomiting. Story 44. I was once called a xenophobe because we ran out of a certain Christmas tree.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.